President Trump promised to avoid Middle East wars of exactly this kind.
Well, and
he said when he started off that it was going to be at most 6 weeks. We are nowhere near finished to this war. Again, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. The regime is very much in place. We're in exactly the kind of quagmire that President Trump promised we wouldn't be in.
The strait is closed.
I thought the focus was going to be on America. If you're going to ask me a question, you have to let me speak for more than 4 words. Otherwise, there's no point in the conversation.
Greenwald low-key destroys Rob Shemed on Newsmax. Let's get into the clip, and I'll save my commentary for the end.
Corey, Glenn, I like to debate this, so I want to ask you just to start here. How, in your opinion, is Iran possibly winning this war?
You may have noticed that this extremely valuable is closed countries to be able to use it, whereas prior to the war, that was not the case. Beyond that, none of the stated goals of this war have been accomplished. Obviously, the Iranian regime is still very much in control of this country. There's been no popular uprising of any kind. And certainly popular opinion is hardened more against the United States than ever before, since the first thing we did on the first day of the war was blow up an elementary school filled with 170 Iranian schoolgirls of the type that we were supposedly there to liberate. And I just want to add the last point, which is that you said this war is becoming unpopular in certain sectors. In fact, this war has been unpopular in the country at large by vast majorities since the beginning. And you are correct that it is becoming more and more unpopular as it drags on.
Let me start with the school. Obviously, that's a story of collateral damage, a school that was very close to an IRGC military center. That's something I think that the president, that anybody would take that back in a second if that happened. Your other points in this is that, our strategy has not been effective, that we haven't met our goals yet. It's been a little over 5 weeks at this point. We've been fighting this war. And I think you could argue that the leadership has been largely decimated. The Strait of Hormuz is not clear at this point. But can you really honestly say that because these oil ships in the Persian Gulf are afraid of an errant drone from a dying regime, that they won't move through at this point? Is a claim that the regime is winning the war, though, because the regime is being decimated?
Are you kidding? Every American military base in that region has been hit, and hit very hard. They obliterated the CIA base in Saudi Arabia. They've completely destroyed American embassies and American military bases in Iraq and Bahrain.
They're firing off what ballistics they have left, and they have a drone capacity that we know about, and they can hit targets that are very close by. But let's move to this for a second. This is a you agree this is a very dangerous regime in Iran. Do you agree with that?
I agree that this war is way more dangerous to Americans than the Iranian regime ever was. We have had, you know how many attacks we've had in our can I just answer?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You know how many attacks we've had on our soil, on American soil, by Iranian terrorists or by Shia terrorists over the last, say, 30 years? 0. There have been huge numbers of attacks that come from the countries we prop up, from the dictatorship of Saudi Arabia.
What about
throughout the region? But Iran is a threat to Israel, not to the United States.
Iran is a threat. I mean, how many Americans live in Israel? 200,000 or so? I mean, how many Americans do we have on bases throughout the Middle East that have been attacked by Iran? How many the effects of proxy terror throughout the region?
By that rationale, we have to defend every country. There are Americans in every country, living in every country throughout the world, far more than Israel. And that means we have to go and defend them. And I think, Rob, this is the real point, is that President Trump promised to avoid Middle East wars of exactly this kind. He said when he started off that it was going to be at most 6 weeks. We are nowhere near finished to this war. Again, the Strait of Hormuz is closed. The regime is very much in place. We're in exactly the kind of quagmire that President Trump promised we wouldn't be in.
The strait is closed.
I thought the focus was going to be on America.
Because the shippers are scared, again, of a potential. I don't think they have control of the Strait of Hormuz. There's just a lot of fear that if you send a boat through there, an errant drone might actually hit one and you could have a huge mess. And I understand that. As far as your claim that, that Iran is not a threat, why do you think, the president, as you just said, he made a name for himself 10 years ago by going after the kinds of people that start these wars. Why would he resist for 5 years of his presidency going into this kind of nonsense and then make a move like this if it wasn't critically important? If they didn't really believe that there was a nuclear program on the way, they were building thousands of ballistics to protect it, and that something terrible was going to happen. Why do you think he would make such a mistake as you claim that he did?
For the same reason that the Iraq War was launched based on total lies, and we got sucked in for over a decade. And the people that you're interviewing, including the people, if you're going to ask me a question, you have to let me speak for more than 4 words. Otherwise, there's no point in the conversation. Okay. The people that you're interviewing who are selling the Iran war to your audience are exactly the same people who sold the Iraq war to your audience based on exactly the same goals. And you can go to the website right now, the White House website, and you will see a huge page that says, the U.S. completely and totally obliterated Iran's nuclear program. That was from June of 2025, the last time we went and bombed Iran with Israel. And now 8 months later, we're supposed to believe that we have to start this gigantic new war over a nuclear program that President Trump himself said was totally and completely obliterated and would take care of this problem into the future. This is exactly the kind of war that the United States has been destroying itself fighting, and exactly the kind Trump said he wouldn't get into.
Would you agree that, I mean, Iran is, it was well documented during the JCPO that they were lying and cheating on that deal. German intelligence made that claim. They were trying to go to German companies and get their nuclear information and try and build up this behind the back of the JCPOA. Iran has long had nuclear ambitions. They've long wanted to, I mean, this is a country, and I know it's very trite to you, and you've heard it a million times. They chant about destroying the United States. They chant about destroying Israel, which I know you don't like Israel, but the United States as well. So if they have a nuclear program that's extremely dangerous, if they're lying in a nuclear deal, what would you do about Iran? You can't go the Obama way. That was, we were duped, we were fooled in that.
First of all, the Iran deal, as it's called, entailed constant invasive surveillance in every one of these sites. Beyond the surveillance, the IAEA could go into every one of these sites and have free reign over what was taking place. There was no movement
warnings before they came, Glenn.
Tulsi Gabbard, who is President Trump's director of national intelligence, she's in charge of evaluating the intelligence, said last year under oath that the Iranian government has never made a decision to go and get nuclear weapons. Of course, they have a nuclear program. That's their right under the NPT that they and pretty much every other country except Israel and other countries like the United States have signed. So they're part of the NPT, which means they have inspections. We've been hearing, Rob, for 20 years, Iran is like 10 seconds away from getting the nuclear bomb, and it never happens. It's the same as saying Saddam has weapons of mass destruction. It's war propaganda. There's no evidence for it.
There's plenty of evidence that Iran was cheating on the JCPOA, that they were eluding. We had to give, how long was the warning we had to give before we went in and inspected Iran's nuclear centrifuges? I mean, we had to tell them before we came in, and that gave them an opportunity to conceal what they were doing and hide it. There's so much deception with this country. You don't agree with that?
The country that is deceptive is Israel. They don't even admit they have a nuclear program. They don't have inspections in. They didn't sign the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to create a framework for keeping nuclear energy safe. Iran has signed that deal.
Chant that they want to destroy the world.
And under the inspection scheme, it was the inspection scheme that the IAEA in Europe wanted. They have cameras in every single crevice of all of those facilities. The consensus of U.S. intelligence has been that Iran is not pursuing a nuclear weapon. And, you know, there are a lot of countries that have nuclear weapons, including North Korea, that we were told are so crazy. They don't use them because people aren't suicidal. And that's true for Iran as well. They've often shown restraint because they act in their rational self-interest.
You're saying an Islamist regime is not suicidal? They invented that whole ideology. I mean, that's where it came from. I'm willing to die to kill you because I think I'm getting 72 virgins at the top.
You know, we prop up all kinds of Islamic regimes. We prop up the tyrannies in Saudi Arabia, in the United Arab Emirates, in Qatar, in Bahrain, in Jordan, in Egypt. Yeah. These are all, to varying degrees, very, very rigid Islamic regimes that live by Sharia law. We prop those up. 9/11 didn't come from Iran. It came from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, it did. I mean, that's a fair point. But I got to ask you one more question before I let you go. Israel or Iran, which do you think is more dangerous to the West?
Right now, I think Israel, with its gigantic nuclear stockpile led by religious and political fanatics, is infinitely more dangerous to the United States than Iran is.
You think it's more fanatical in Israel than it is in Iran?
Look at how many countries they've attacked in the last 3 years. There's 7 or 8 different countries they've attacked. They've stolen land from Syria, Lebanon. They vaporized people in Gaza.
That they're
I think Israel is infinitely more dangerous.
They're constantly attacked for existing. I mean, you're a Jewish guy, right? You understand that.
No, that's not why. That's not why they're attacked. That's not why Israel is attacked. You know, there's a very complex history of them stealing land and being expansionist. But at the end of the day, I thought Donald Trump was going to focus on the American worker, the American community, revitalizing our Where is all that? We're only focused on the Middle East and wars in the Middle East. This is madness.
That's my contention, and I have.
That's crazy. I mean, exactly. And people have been living in peace in the Middle East in Palestine. Jews, Christians, Muslims lived in peace together. And when you prompt up wars, of course, you're not going to have peace. And this man just looks uncomfortable. Rob just looks uncomfortable. He's pissed. He can't get one point across to Greenwald. Every point he makes is getting shut down. And he doesn't know what to say. He's just fuming. You can tell just the way he looks. He's about to puff out of that suit. But that's crazy. But good for Glenn Greenwald for telling the truth and shutting him down. But thanks for watching. And we'll see you on the next one.